Well, I just feel so privileged to be here tonight with you guys. My name is Erin Bush. I'm a Diamond Ambassador with Plexus, which still does not feel real. And so fair warning, when you get to Diamond, you don't necessarily feel any different. But you feel sometimes emotional just because, it's this achievement that you've worked so hard for, and it makes you kind of tear up. But there really is no difference between me and you guys out there. I don't feel it all. You guys are working just as hard, and the fruit will come. And I hope what you hear from me tonight just encourages you with that. It's fascinating because lately I seem to be having these conversations with people, and I find that the longer I'm doing Plexus, the more frank and honest I become. Not that I wasn't before, but that I just lay it out all on the table. And one of the things that I find myself keep saying is that the number one thing that keeps people from advancing in their business is fear. And what I have learned recently as a Diamond Ambassador, by the way, I have learned this. So this is not something I learned at Silver, and this is not something I learned at Ruby, and this is not something I learned at Emerald. This is something I learned at Diamond. And that is because, guys, you're just always going to learn. If you're coachable and this business, you just have to keep learning, is that fear never goes away. It just keeps coming back, maybe in a different form, maybe in the same form. Fear just basically kind of feels the same when it comes to doing the business that we do, being self-entrepreneurs, but it shows up in different ways. And believe it or not, just because someone has the title of Emerald, Sapphire, or Diamond does not mean that they don't go through periods of fear or go through periods of being stumped on what to say. A little hint, one of the number one things I see Jules ask each other is, how do you respond to this? So, there is no magic when you get to where you're getting, your goal, because once you're there, your goals change and you are still growing. And fear, as we know, is the number one thing that keeps anyone in any situation, no matter what it is, business or otherwise, from achieving their goals. I almost feel like we're kind of wired primitively to stay in a safe place. Even if we set aside the spiritual side of it, of Satan, who does not want us to have positive influence on others, and we know that's what our company does and what our business is all about. But even just our own primitive nature, we want to be safe, and we don't want to go out of our comfort zone. And I'll give you kind of a silly analogy to this, but my daughter saved up money, and she purchased or paid the rescue fee for a kitten. And I've watched this tiny, tiny little thing grow bigger, and as he grows bigger, he grows bolder. And we've got 2 dogs in the house, and he had no experience with dogs previously. And I think he's finally coming to the point at about 7 months old now that he feels he can take on our King Charles Cavalier, because instead of running and hiding, he just gets puffed up and bigger. And sometimes he even goes out and seeks to see the dog, almost like he's wanting, some kind of a fight. I don't know, fight. I hope not fight, but some kind of confrontation with him. Well, in the past, he would cower and hide. So even animals apparently go out of their comfort zone at times. And I'm sure you've seen that with your own pets as well. But to me, it kind of like is this analogy for our business. The more we do something, the more comfortable we get, and our comfort zone gets bigger and bigger, which means in order for us to grow our business, guess what we have to do? We have to find further and further ways to go outside of our comfort zone. And I recently realized that I had kind of become really comfortable. It was comfortable managing back office issues for I didn't like it, but I was familiar with that and comfortable with that. I was comfortable with some of my potentials who've said no to me for a year or more, continuing to say no. So if we had some kind of a deal going on, and it was the same people I was reaching out to every time, and their answer was never any different. I had become comfortable in posting on my team page every day. I'd become comfortable in standing up and doing opportunity events, because now that I'm local here and I've got a little bit bigger team, I'm doing them all the time, once a month, and I became comfortable in that. And I realized I was no longer going outside of my comfort zone. And guess what? My own personal business became stagnant. So I had a little bit of a wake-up call when I realized that I needed to start going beyond what I was comfortable with, and I needed to try and find some different ways to grow my own personal business. And that was uncomfortable. What did that look like for me? And it was, doing things like on different social media sites, learning a whole new, I did not grow up in this whole tech. We did Pac-Man on a little, portable thing. Just what the original Nintendo with Duck Hunt. Anyway. So this whole, and that's uncomfortable to have to do that. It has been uncomfortable for me to try and figure out, how do I brand myself as a 40-something woman, doing plexus and homeschooling. It seems so benign and kind of inane to me, just boring. How do I do this? And so it has been a real stretch for me. But I also find that when I'm being stretched, that is when God seems to start bringing in the people he wants me to influence next. And I find that so fascinating, that God really honors that action by bringing in, it's like, oh gosh, maybe it's a little bit like the farmer who goes and plants the seeds and does the watering and the nurturing and all of the things he's got to do that's hard work before he ever sees any fruit. Trusting that the fruit is going to come. And God seems to have, and I'd forgotten that, just how important it is to be in action, and not just your normal IPA. Remember, I was telling you I was reaching out to these potentials who were all saying the same thing over and over and over for a long time now. But that became really comfortable to hear, I'm not ready yet, from them. So it was time. I needed to be uncomfortable, to be in action of being uncomfortable. Now, that can be really hard for people. So I love to help people understand how unselfish it is to be uncomfortable in telling about plexus to people. So I have found that it's very easy to get into that comfort box, dealing with the same things, the back office, ambassadors that won't do what you train them to do, what you hope that they do, your leaders, and you're probably, going, why isn't my team doing everything? I'm pouring into them, I'm pouring into these people, and they're not doing anything. And yet we can kind of become comfortable in that place because it gives us a reason for why we're not growing. But really the reason in the end becomes the inaction of being comfortable, the inaction of not being uncomfortable, if that makes sense, of ourselves. So I think what happens is we start to get burned out in our business. And then we maybe even check out. And then what we have a risk here of happening is bailout. So how do you avoid that burnout, that checking out. Now, this does not mean you work 7 days a week, 24/7, it doesn't mean anything like that. It doesn't mean you don't take a vacation or that kind of thing. But I personally I love to teach on what I have recently learned, and this is it, that I was getting burned out, even because I was doing the same things. And they may have been good things. My team needs help with the back office. My team they need training. I need to keep reaching out to those potentials that keep telling me not yet. But I was not stretching myself. And because of that, I was burning out. So I would challenge you to look at your business and look at how you feel about your business and think to yourself, when is the last time you did something uncomfortable out of your comfort zone that stretched yourself in your business? Because it can be a very exciting to stretch yourself. It's really scary, but it can be really exciting. So one of the first questions I think to ask yourself is, when is the last time you signed a new ambassador or new customers? Now, I know you guys are all leaders and you all won this trip, so you are probably in the process of, really adding to your team and so on. But when is the last time you went outside of that goal or made a really big goal and then had to really work hard for it? And one of the first things you can do is, after you evaluate how you feel about your business, is change that perspective, especially if your thoughts are negative, to who can I influence and love today? And who can I love by telling about plexus? Somebody new. And by asking yourself that, all of a sudden, all that fear goes away, because you're not thinking about you anymore. You may be saying the word I, but what you're really doing is thinking about somebody else. You're thinking about it in a completely different way. I can't see you guys right now, but I know that so many of us, and I would love to see you raise your hand, somebody, like, let's say an autoimmune disease, who has been greatly helped by plexus. So who is the next person you are going to help in that way? Who is the next person you're going to love enough to tell them about the business, because they're going to bed stressed every night about whether or not they're going to be able to pay for a private school for their kids, or whether or not they'll be able to take a vacation that year? So when you start looking outside of yourself like that, all of a sudden your uncomfortable zone becomes much more comfortable, and you take that step of doing something positive for someone else. And the result is it does something positive for you and your business. And so maybe you start with just one. Who can I reach out to today to tell them how plexus can bless them? Then you might say, how many people can I reach out to today to tell them what this company can do for them? It can be very uncomfortable to cold message or reach out to a warm market person who's not shown any interest whatsoever. But when you think about it unselfishly, all of a sudden that fear can really dissipate. And let me tell you this too. Write up the message, look over one time, and push send. Commit to it. Once it's done, it's done. And I just find once it's done like that, like I will sit there and, oh my gosh, am I saying exactly the right thing? Nobody ever says the right thing every single time. Not even diamonds, not sapphires, not emeralds. Nobody says the right thing every time. But it is better to say something imperfectly than to say nothing at all. You don't know who is out there who desperately needs what you have. All right, number two. The number two reason so number one, avoiding burnout by unselfishly helping others. Who can you help today? Just such a small step. Number two, study how to love and serve others by keeping it unselfish. There's a fantastic book out there by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And you will find that the majority of people, they just want to be seen. They want to be accepted for who they are in all of their imperfections. In fact, most people, most of us in general, we don't really want to know who we truly are. In fact, that can be one of the scariest parts of growing in your business, is coming to understand who you really are, because you might be afraid that you may not be accepted for who that person is, or you may not even like who you actually are. But see, that's where God's grace comes in, doesn't it? Where he loved us first, and understanding that great creator love he loved you enough to die for you, loved you enough to create you. Read Psalms 139 if you were ever doubting who you are in Christ, because that dwelling on how he knew you in the womb, his many thoughts of you are so good. His desire to have you understand how great his love is for you. So I'm getting off track, sorry. But when, what are my notes here? When you love people, this is the point I really want you to get from. When you love people where they're at and love them enough to tell them about what you have here, it won't matter if they say no. If they reject you, it will not matter, because your love for them and your desire for them to be blessed comes from an unselfish place. Yeah, I think about that with Christ and how unselfishly he loved us first. And yet, he was rejected for sure. And yet he still loved enough. And I know we are human, and we're not the same as Jesus, obviously, and we can still get our feelings hurt. But I do think it really helps when you are coming from an unselfish point of view. It helps you overcome any fear. It helps you overcome any rejection, because really that's where the fear comes from. We are so worried to be looked at a certain way, and we want to be seen for who we hope to be, and not necessarily seen as who we really are. But by loving other people first and unselfishly reaching out, it can just calm that emotion and fear down. All right, I'm moving on to my next thing. I'm getting off of here a little bit. Okay, I want you to remember, as you are talking with everybody here this weekend, and you go into your business next week, you have got to remember there are literally hundreds of thousands of people out there that are hurting and praying for you to reach them. If you know any of my story, there's a small little piece I don't talk about a whole lot, but about a week before my sponsor posted about Plexus, I was laying on the bathroom rug with the door closed, naked, crying out to God. The door was locked. I was weeping and weeping because I had no strength. The exhaustion was to the point where I felt as if I could just sleep for 100 years and be okay to never wake up. It was just so debilitating. And I had just taken a job to go back to teaching part-time. And I thought, how in the world, when I cannot even get through a day without taking a nap, how am I going to go into the classroom and be able to pour into students when I can hardly even make lunches, and I certainly can't make dinner? I was so exhausted. And so I was laying on the bathroom floor weeping, asking God to use me. And these were my words. I said, Lord, if you want to use me, you have got to give me the strength. I give you my broken, unhealthy, unattractive body. Use it for what you will. And I just laid there. Went to bed, And a few days later, Amber posted about plexus. A couple of days after that, messaging back and forth with her, I ordered two 3-day trials. And that's the beginning of my story. But there are people that are weeping and begging for something to come into their lives. The question is, will you be that blessing? Amber, I've said it before, Amber is 100% sure that God would have brought plexus into my life through someone else if she had not said yes and posted about plexus on her Facebook page. Posting on Facebook can be easy for some, hard for others. Maybe it means messaging somebody you've been thinking about for a while. Maybe it means talking to a cashier that you see, when you're checking out at the store once a week. Whatever that means, you've got to listen to God's prompting and do it. She often wonders what would have happened if she had never posted and had kept plexus to herself. So please remember, there are people out there desperate for what we have and what you have. Don't steal those people's hope by giving up. You do not know what your next post, what your next message, you don't know who that's going to help. You just don't know. You don't know until you do it. Keep moving one foot after the other. I want you to think about, what if the person who shared plexus with you never had? Where would you be? I know where I would be. I would be on the couch, probably periodic hospital visits, feeling no hope. My children I would still be angry and depressed and not have friends, and my children growing up would be sucking that from me and learning from me, and be growing up into people who were self-conscious and timid and scared, because that's what I was. And instead, they're growing into bold and confident and loving individuals who are open-minded and see themselves as Christ sees them. And that is because someone told me about plexus. I totally and completely believe that I would not be where I am mentally, spiritually, or physically if it was not for that pink drink. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that amazing? If you have any faith whatsoever, I could not read my Bible. Do you not think that Satan is not happy about that? He does not want you to be a person of influence, and he wants us to be completely overcome and overwhelmed by the stress financially of life, by the stress of physical problems, brain fog, autoimmune disease. He delights in that. So in fact, I've always noticed that it seems like when I'm sick, that is when those bad thoughts come in the most. Have you ever noticed that? That when you are not feeling well, you just start doubting everything in your life. Maybe it's just me, but or somebody comes out of surgery and they're like, oh my gosh, they've got to recover, and then their business feels like they're falling apart. I really think he uses that opportunity when we are physically hurting to hurt us spiritually. That certainly was the case with me. You just don't know who's out there. What if, when the going got tough, your sponsor stopped sharing about plexus? Would you know about it? Would you be here? What if someone had told them no, they'd had somebody fall off, they got discouraged, and they just shut down? Do you see what I'm saying about timing and divine appointment? And this, you guys, you're in something so much bigger than you. It is so much bigger. So you've got to keep that big picture in front of you. You are going to have valleys. Absolutely. And it really, what you do in those valleys, that is what matters. That is what grows you. Okay, so have the mindset that you will be resilient and determined and loving on others, to be a positive influence in their life. I'm almost done. Let me turn to my last page. Okay, because I don't want to keep you guys. I know you guys have so much fun to have. All right, okay. Now, a couple more things. Remember who you are. Remember who you are in Christ. Remember who you are, an ambassador of hope, an empowerer of people to take control of their health and take control of their finances and take control of their mindset. How incredible would our world be if Plexus ambassadors didn't give up, kept changing their perspective, changing lives, changing people's, okay, when I think about self-development, now I use this word all the time, what it really is being your best self. Imagine if more people were their best self. And you guys, that is one of the things you are empowering people to do. If you have a team and you train your team on what you're learning, train your team. I don't care if you haven't learned it 100% yet. Train your team on what you're learning. Tell people train your kids on what you're learning, especially when it comes to mindset and self-development. You are worthy and you are loved, and God desires to use you. And listen, you are here for a reason. There is no coincidence here. None. You are here for such a time as this. We are only in 3 countries and officially only in 2. There are a lot more places to go, and we have hardly even touched the United States. You guys, this legacy you are building is not just financial. It is about changing families. It is about changing people to do good and better things, to change the world around them, as well as change their own personal, world as well. That was not very eloquently put at all, but you get my point here. This is so much bigger than us, so much bigger. All right, that is all I have for you tonight. I'm so glad and so thankful to be able to be on here. I know you guys are going to be refreshed and renewed, and I hope you sit down and talk about what you can do to get outside of your comfort zone. What does that look like? What does that mean for you? And then maybe even wake up tomorrow, okay, who can I positively influence today? Who can I love enough to tell them about Plexus, even though they haven't asked yet? All right, I'm going to stop recording.